The storm outside the base had been brewing for hours, but compared to the storm inside the training compound, it was nothing. The halls buzzed with a strange tension that morning, the kind that made even seasoned operators glance over their shoulders, unsure of why the air felt so different. New arrivals always brought some disruption, but this one? This one felt unusual. Whispers traveled faster than the rain sliding down the barracks windows. There was a new SEAL checking in, and rumor had it she wasn't much to look at in terms of rank or size. What they didn't know was that she was about to redefine every assumption they had. Before the story could even begin, a bold voice cut through the static. "Welcome back to Navy SEAL." Today's story isn't just another tale from the teams. It's one that made every operator rethink what it means to earn respect. So buckle in. The scene picked up in the heart of Naval Special Warfare Training Command. Reveille had just ended, boots stomped across wet concrete, and the metallic smell of gear and ocean mist hung over everything like a permanent fog. The platoon's common room was crowded with operators preparing for a skills evaluation to determine team placements for the next rotation. Competition was fierce. Pride was fiercer. That's when she walked in. Petty Officer Reyes was small for a SEAL, compact, quiet, almost unremarkable to someone who judged by appearances alone. She carried no swagger, no booming voice, no trace of the ego that so often spilled through those doors. Just calm eyes and a sealed envelope containing her assignment orders. Some of the guys barely noticed her. Others gave the quick once-over and dismissed her. But one man, Senior Chief Dalton, did more than that. He squinted at her rank patch, then burst into a laugh loud enough to make everyone turn. "That's it? That's the rank they gave the new addition? You sure you're in the right building, Petty Officer? The mess hall's 2 doors down. This here's SEAL territory." A couple of the younger operators snickered, relieved someone else had spoken the words they were thinking. No one expected Reyes to respond. Most rookies didn't, not to Dalton. He was the kind of man whose reputation alone filled rooms before he even stepped inside. Gruff, decorated, and brutally honest, he respected strength and made no effort to pretend otherwise. Reyes didn't flinch, didn't shrink. She simply stepped around him, placing her orders gently on the table. Her voice when she spoke was soft, too soft for what they expected. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Dalton stared at her, eyebrows raised, as if he couldn't believe she had dared to reply. "Is that so?" he said, circling her like a shark testing the water. "Because all I'm seeing is someone who skipped a few steps on her way to the kiddie pool." Someone in the back muttered, "Damn." But Reyes didn't rise to it. She was studying the training schedule pinned to the wall, her expression unreadable. The quieter she became, the more Dalton pressed. "You even know what we do here, Petty Officer?" he drawled. "We break people like you before breakfast. We don't babysit." Still nothing. It irritated him more than if she'd fought back. The room grew heavier, as if everyone present sensed this moment was about to become a story retold for years. Reyes finally turned to face him, her hand relaxed at her sides, not defensive, not threatened, just steady. "Senior Chief," she said calmly, "I've completed every prerequisite required to stand here, same as anyone else in this room." Dalton grinned. "Oh, I don't doubt you checked boxes. Paperwork can make anyone look good, but in this line of work, paper means nothing. Rank means nothing. The teams separate the real warriors from the ones who just think they can hang." A few heads nodded. Others pretended not to watch, but their silent interest betrayed them. Reyes didn't break eye contact. She didn't break eye contact. Then she, one by one, mastered every test, proving her ability to overcome any obstacle. This was a truly remarkable demonstration of strength. Then she finally turned to face him, her hands relaxed at her sides, not defensive, not threatened, just steady. "Senior Chief," she said calmly, I've completed every prerequisite required to stand here, same as anyone else in this room." Dalton grinned. "Oh, I don't doubt you checked boxes. Paperwork can make anyone look good, but in this line of work, paper means nothing. Rank means nothing. The teams separate the real warriors from the ones who just think they can hang." A few heads nodded. Others pretended not to watch, but their silent interest betrayed them. Reyes didn't break eye contact. She didn't break eye contact. Then she, one by one, mastered every test, proving her ability to overcome any obstacle. This was a truly remarkable demonstration of strength. The true shock, the reply that left everyone speechless, hadn't happened yet. It was coming. And when it did, it would become a story told across bases for years. Mud splashed under every boot as the operators reached the midpoint of the course, the rain now little more than a stubborn drizzle clinging to uniforms and gear. Adrenaline thickened the air. Most of the platoon was too focused on their own breathing, their own footing, to notice anything but the obstacles in front of them. But a few kept glancing sideways, because something strange was happening. Reyes wasn't just keeping up, she was gaining. Dalton hit the ground first after the rope climb, rolling to his feet and sprinting forward with the confidence of a man who'd never been beaten on this course before. His record stood untouched for years, and every operator knew it. He thrived on events like this, head-to-head moments where he could crush someone's spirit before they even realized they'd lost. Reyes dropped down a second later. Only a second. And the guys trailing behind suddenly forgot their own struggles. They'd never seen anyone move like that. Dalton didn't look back. He didn't have to. He expected her to fade, to burn out, to crumble under the weight of the course. He'd seen it 100 times. New arrivals always had a burst of drive at the start. Then the course crushed them. That was the natural order of things. He didn't know Reyes had never cared much for natural order. The next obstacle was the wall, a slick, towering panel made worse by the rain. Most operators needed 2 attempts, a few needed 3. Dalton scaled it with his signature move, a sprint, a leap, and a hook of the elbow that pulled him up and over in one fluid motion. Reyes jogged toward the wall with the same collected calm she had shown since the start. Not a heavy breath, not a stumble. She paused only long enough to gauge height and angle. Then she ran. One jump, one grab, one swing of momentum. She cleared the wall as if it were routine, smooth, silent, effortless. A murmur rippled across the operators watching from below. Did she just... No way she cleared it that fast. In this rain, that's not normal. But Reyes didn't even register the attention. She was already moving on, her eyes locked ahead like someone who saw only the next step and nothing else. Dalton reached the tire drag, planting his feet and pulling with all the brute strength he was known for. The heavy, mud-laden rubber sliced grooves into the soaked ground as he hauled it forward with grunts of raw power. Reyes arrived moments later. Instead of yanking the tire the traditional way, she crouched, checked the weight distribution, adjusted her grip by mere inches, and pulled at an angle that allowed momentum to do half the work. Her method wasn't about force, it was about precision. She wasn't the strongest, but she was the most efficient. Dalton noticed the sound of movement behind him and glanced over his shoulder, expecting one of the usual rivals, a big guy like Cruz or Maddox. Instead, he saw her, still there, still right behind him. And she wasn't winded. Something sharp and irritated flashed in his eyes. He pulled harder. Rainwater dripped from his jaw, his boot sinking deeper in the mud as he fought the tire forward. He didn't care about conserving energy. He didn't care about pacing. He cared about one thing: winning, crushing, proving a point he thought didn't need proving. Reyes finished her drag seconds after he did, jogging past the dropped tire with a composed stride that contrasted violently with Dalton's aggressive pace. Some of the younger operators exchanged uneasy glances. This is weird. She's not slowing. Dalton's pushing harder than ever and she's still right behind him. No one said what they were really thinking. What if she was better? Dalton moved into the marksmanship segment, breathing heavier now, grabbing the practice rifle from the rack. He dropped into position, firing shots at targets that popped up in random intervals. His aim was good. It always was. Reyes reached her station. She checked the rifle, adjusted the stock, and fired. Her first 3 shots struck before most operators even raised their weapons. Ping, ping, ping. Clean hits. Cruz, watching from his lane, froze. Holy. He didn't even finish the thought before her 4th and 5th shots followed with the same smooth cadence. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Her transitions were precise, as if each bullet had been pre-programmed into the target. Dalton heard the rapid sequence of impacts and scowled. He fired faster, tightening his grip, pushing his accuracy to the limit. But pushing meant mistakes. 2 of his shots landed just shy of center. Reyes never rushed, never overextended, and still somehow moved faster. Dalton finished his sequence half a second before she did, but he knew. He didn't have to see her targets to know. Her rhythm told the whole story. He should have been leading by a wide margin by now. Instead, she was right on his heels. The instructors exchanged a look, the kind of look that said this evaluation was turning into something bigger than a simple skills test. The next stretch of the course was the endurance run, a grueling lap around the muddy perimeter of the training field. Dalton launched into it with a fury, splashing water and mud behind him with every stride. Reyes followed. Not close enough to challenge him yet, not far enough to dismiss. Her breathing remained controlled, even, almost serene. Dalton's breaths grew harsher, his muscles burned, sweat mixed with rain on his face. He pushed harder, trying to open the gap between them, trying to break her tempo, trying to assert the dominance he believed he was entitled to. But every time he accelerated, she matched. Not immediately, not with desperation. She simply adjusted, gradually closing the space as if she were studying him, learning his rhythm, analyzing the exact moments where he lost efficiency, and she used it. By the 3rd quarter of the lap, she was 15 feet behind him, then 10, then 5. The operators watching fell silent. No one had ever gained on Dalton in the endurance run. Ever. Dalton felt her presence before he heard her footsteps. It infuriated him. He pumped his legs harder, pushing so violently against the ground that he almost slipped on the wet grass. Reyes did not slip. She did not falter. She moved like the course belonged to her. When she drew up beside him, he shot him a sideways glare, expecting to see strain on his face. He saw none. Her expression was calm, focused, like she was running a warm-up. Dalton growled through clenched teeth. "You think you're keeping up?" Reyes didn't look at him. "I'm just getting started." It wasn't loud. It wasn't smug. But it was the exact reply that made the moment legendary. Dalton's eyes widened, stunned, not by the words, but the certainty behind them. For the first time he realized she wasn't trying to keep up. She was pacing him, and she was winning. Dalton surged forward with every ounce of power he had left. The finish line came into view. Operators gathered, instructors watching closely, whispers spreading among them like wildfire. Reyes waited, just long enough. She studied his pattern, his stride, his weakening form. Then she accelerated with a burst so controlled, so fluid, it didn't look like a sprint. It looked like release. She glided past Dalton in the final stretch, her boots barely making a sound while his pounded like thunder. Dalton tried to catch her, but his legs were done, his breath was gone, his rhythm had collapsed. Reyes crossed the finish line 5 full seconds ahead of him. No one spoke. The instructors stared. Dalton, panting, hands on his knees, dripping with sweat and disbelief, looked up at her as she stood calmly, barely winded. She offered him the smallest nod of respect, not mockery, not triumph, just acknowledgement. Dalton swallowed hard. "Who the hell are you?" Reyes turned to the group forming around her. Her voice remained soft, steady, unwavering. "You mocked my rank," she said, looking directly at Dalton. "But rank didn't get me here." She stepped forward, meeting his stunned glare head-on. "This did." She tapped her chest lightly, not the rank patch, not the name tape, but her heart. "And if you want to know the rest," she added, her tone shifting only slightly, "you'll have to try harder." Every operator froze. Dalton straightened slowly. The fire in his eyes were replaced by something else, respect buried deep beneath shock and wounded pride. But this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning, because the evaluation wasn't over, and Reyes had been holding back. What she'd reveal next would change everything, even for Dalton himself. Rainwater continued to drip from helmets and soaked uniforms as the operators stared at Reyes in stunned silence. The finish line behind her felt less like the end of a test and more like the start of an unanswered question, one they suddenly weren't sure they wanted the answer to. Dalton stood upright at last, breath ragged, pride wounded in a way he hadn't felt in over a decade. He had been beaten before, once or twice, but never like this, never by someone so calm, so unreadable, so impossibly efficient. The look she'd given him wasn't triumphant or arrogant. It was something worse. It was patient, as if she wasn't finished. An instructor finally broke the silence with a sharp whistle. "Don't stand around. We're not done. Movements to the combat sheds, now." Boots thudded across the ground as the group shuffled toward the open-air training structure. Dalton walked slower than usual, feeling the burn in his legs. Reyes walked at the same steady pace she'd held since the beginning, water dripping off her gloves, her breathing still even. The combat shed was dark, lit by a few overhead bulbs and the sound of rain hitting metal. It was the place for the final and hardest segment of the evaluation, the mock combat drills. Close quarters battle, reaction tests, situational judgment. It wasn't about speed or strength, it was about instinct, the kind that separated operators who survived from those who didn't. Dalton always crushed this part. Always. As the operators lined up, Dalton's confidence began to return. Running was one thing, shooting was one thing, but fighting, that was his language. He crossed his arms, staring down the line until his gaze locked with Reyes. "You kept up on the course, but this is where we find out who you really are." Reyes didn't blink. "Good." The instructors called the first operators into the mock house, Cruz and Maddox. The others watched their silhouettes move through the obstacle-filled rooms, heard the pops of sim rounds, the thuds of bodies hitting padded floors. When they finished, the scores went up on the whiteboard. Then the next pair. Then the next. Each time operators exited, sweat-soaked and gasping, the tension built. Finally, one of the instructors called out, "Reyes, Dalton, you're up." The entire room went still. Dalton rolled his shoulders, stepping into position, his expression sharpening into something dangerous. "Don't hold back," he muttered. Reyes looked at him with that same unreadable calm. "I never do." They entered the mock house, 2 rooms of dim lighting, plywood walls, and targets hidden behind corners and door frames. The setup changed every time. No one knew the layout until they moved through it. The whistle blew. Dalton surged forward instantly, big frame moving faster than most men half his size. He cleared the first corner with explosive precision, firing 2 sim rounds into a pop-up target before Reyes even entered the doorway. But Reyes didn't rush. She didn't try to match his speed. She watched, measured, listened. As Dalton kicked through the next door with force, Reyes moved behind him with a smooth, ghost-like step that barely disturbed the air. Dalton fired again at a target overhead, but his aggressive pace made him overshoot the next corner, leaving a blind spot on his left. Reyes saw it, registered it, and corrected it with effortless movement, clearing the weak point before a simulated enemy could have tagged them. Dalton didn't notice. Not yet. They moved deeper. A target swung out unexpectedly. Dalton threw himself sideways and fired wildly, hitting the panel by brute force and reflex. Reyes didn't fire at all. Her weapon remained still, tucked tight against her shoulder, but her eyes calculated the threat instantly. She stepped behind Dalton, using his movement as cover, then repositioned herself cleanly as he regained balance. Dalton looked back briefly, confused. "Why didn't you take that shot?" "It wasn't the right angle," she replied softly. "You covered it. I moved." Dalton frowned. He didn't understand. In close-quarters drills, everyone tried to be the one who cleared, the one who fired, the one who led. No one willingly held back. But Reyes wasn't holding back. She was reading him. The next room exploded with noise. A series of pop-up targets appeared from different directions, forcing both operators into rapid synchronization. Dalton fired left, Reyes fired right. Dalton ducked down, Reyes pivoted up. The instructors watching from the monitors exchanged glances. No verbal communication, no hesitation, no conflict of pace. She was matching him perfectly, not because she needed to, but because she chose to. Dalton felt something shifting, something impossible. She was anticipating him. It wasn't normal. It wasn't standard teamwork. It was as if she could see the drill before it happened. They reached the final chamber, the hardest one, a simulated hostage scenario. A dark room, moving shadows, strobes of light, multiple targets, some civilian, some hostile, all mixed together. Dalton steadied his breathing. Reyes simply exhaled. The scenario erupted. Targets launched from tracks, hidden panels burst open. It was chaos, even for experienced operators. Dalton shot fast, moving aggressively. He clipped 2 hostile targets, but missed a third hiding behind a swinging panel. Reyes stepped into the gap immediately, firing a single shot that hit the target dead center. Dalton spun, surprised. How did she even see it? The strobe lights flickered again. A civilian target swung into Dalton's path. He jerked his weapon away just in time, avoiding a penalty. Reyes reached out and grabbed his vest and yanked him aside before he stepped onto a pressure pad that would have triggered a full sim penalty. He hadn't even noticed it. She had. They took down the final hostiles. Once the strobe died and silence returned, both stood in the center of the room, breathing the heavy air. The whistle blew. The drill was over. Dalton rested his hands on his hips, sweat dripping down his temples. But this time he wasn't panting from exertion. He was shaken. Reyes approached him slowly. The dim light flickered off her drenched uniform. "You asked who I am," she said quietly. "Yeah." Reyes studied him for a moment, her eyes steady. "I don't lead with rank, because rank isn't what matters here. You know that." Dalton stared at her, unsure whether to nod. "And I didn't come here to replace anyone, or to prove that I'm better. I came here because this team is going operational soon. High-risk deployment." You know the mission. You know the stakes. Dalton's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what she meant. Reyes took one step closer. I've been on missions like that, more than my file shows. And I survived them because I learned something most people never do. Dalton's brow furrowed. What's that? Reyes lifted her chin slightly. How to see the fight before it starts. Dalton felt those words like a punch to the chest. Before he could respond, the instructors called them out of the building. When they stepped back into the rainy training yard, the rest of the operators gathered around. The instructors tallied scores on the board, each number appearing like a small explosion across the shed. Dalton scanned the results. His scores were high, higher than most. But Reyes's? She wasn't just above him, she was nearly perfect. Whispers spread through the group. Is that real? How'd she score that high? No one gets numbers like that. Dalton looked at her again, and for the first time, the disbelief in his eyes wasn't directed at her skill. It was directed at himself. He didn't understand what she was. Not yet. Not fully. But he knew one thing. Whatever Reyes had been through before arriving here, it was far beyond standard SEAL operations. And the truth behind her past, the truth behind the rank Dalton mocked, was about to surface in a way no one expected. Because the commanding officer was walking toward them now, raincoat flapping in the wind, holding a folder marked classified. And inside that folder was the real reason Reyes was assigned here. The reason she didn't react to mockery. The reason she could outrun, outshoot, and outthink nearly everyone around her. The reason even Dalton wouldn't be able to deny what she was. Not a recruit. Not a mistake. Not someone who got lucky. But something else entirely.